Lisa Martinez pressed her face against the transport window as the ship approached Zentara Prime. The planet looked like a giant blue marble wrapped in silver clouds. 3 moons hung in the purple sky like jewels. She had never seen anything so beautiful or so scary. The other passengers on the transport ship were not human. A tall being made of what looked like living crystal sat across from her. Its body caught the light from the window and threw rainbow patterns on the walls. Next to it, a creature that looked like a walking tree with too many arms was reading something on a glowing tablet. Behind Lisa, she could hear the wet sound of something that might have been breathing underwater. Lisa was one of only 12 humans chosen for the Galactic Academy exchange program. Back on Earth, everyone said she was lucky. Her parents cried when she left. Her little brother gave her his favorite toy spaceship to take with her. Now, sitting in a ship full of aliens heading to a planet she had only seen in pictures, Lisa wondered if lucky was the right word. The transport docked with a soft bump. Lisa grabbed her single bag and followed the other passengers down the ramp. The air on Zentara Prime tasted different. It was clean and had a sweet smell like flowers she had never smelled before. The gravity felt lighter than Earth's. Each step made her feel like she might float away. The academy buildings rose up in front of her like mountains made of glass and metal. They twisted up into the sky in shapes that made her dizzy to look at. Floating platforms moved students between the buildings. Some students had wings and flew from place to place. Others seemed to teleport in flashes of light. Lisa walked through the main gate with her bag bouncing against her leg. Other students stared at her as she passed. She heard whispers in languages that sounded like music or wind or breaking glass. A few students pointed at her with things that might have been fingers or tentacles or claws. At the registration desk, a being that looked like it was made of starlight spoke to her in perfect English. Lisa Martinez from Earth. Welcome to the Galactic Academy. You are assigned to Dormitory Section 7, Room 423. Your roommate is Zeftal of Centauri Prime. Lisa took the key card and found her way to the dormitory. The hallways were huge to fit students of all sizes. Some doors were tiny and near the floor. Others were so big that Lisa could have driven a car through them. Her door was human-sized, which was a relief. She opened the door and found her roommate unpacking. Zeftal looked like a person made of blue light. He was tall and thin with long arms and a face that was almost human but not quite. When he saw Lisa, he smiled with many teeth. You must be the human, Zeftal said. His voice sounded like bells ringing. I have heard much about your species. You are the new ones, yes? The ones who only learned to travel the stars 30 years ago. Lisa nodded. That's right. We're still pretty new to all this. Zeftal made a sound that might have been laughing. Do not worry. Most species here are friendly to newcomers, though some believe humans are too primitive to be here. The Drakari especially think Earth should have waited another 1,000 years before joining the Academy. Lisa unpacked her few belongings while Zeftal told her about the different species at the Academy. The Drakari were large reptile-like beings who loved to fight and believed strength was everything. The Silicari were the crystal people who were incredibly smart and loved technology. The Aquarians lived in water and were graceful and peaceful. The Ethereals were ancient beings made of energy who thought they were better than everyone else. And the humans? Lisa asked. Zeftal tilted his head. Humans are interesting. You have no special abilities like the others. No telepathy, no energy, manipulation, no natural armor or weapons. But you learn to travel the stars faster than any species in recorded history. Most take thousands of years to develop space travel. Humans did it in a few hundred. This makes some species nervous. That evening, Lisa ate dinner in the Great Hall. The room was enormous and filled with the strangest collection of beings she had ever imagined. She sat at a table with other new students. Jake Collins, the only other human in her year, sat next to her. He was from Texas and seemed as overwhelmed as she was. This is crazy, Jake whispered. Look at that thing over there, it's eating metal. Lisa looked where he was pointing. A being that looked like a collection of metal scraps was indeed eating what appeared to be steel bars. I guess everyone has to eat something, she said. After dinner, Lisa attended her first class. Advanced Strategic Studies was taught by Professor Veltharian, an ethereal who appeared as a shifting cloud of silver light. The classroom was a dome that could display any environment. When Lisa entered, it looked like they were floating in space surrounded by stars. "Welcome, students," Professor Veltharian said. His voice came from everywhere at once. "This semester, you will participate in a comprehensive war simulation. You will be divided into factions representing different approaches to interstellar conflict. The simulation will test not only your tactical knowledge but your ability to think like the military leaders of your species." Lisa felt her stomach drop. War simulation? She had never been in the military. She had barely finished high school, on Earth. Professor Veltharian continued. "Each faction will control a virtual star system with planets, fleets, and resources. You must expand your territory, defend your holdings, and ultimately achieve dominance over your opponents. The simulation will run for 8 weeks and will determine your final grade." The professor began dividing students into groups. The Drakari students were placed together in what he called the hegemony faction. They looked pleased and began discussing strategies in their harsh language. The Silicari formed the collective faction and immediately started calculating odds and probabilities. Lisa and Jake found themselves grouped with students from what Professor Veltharian called the minor species. There was a student who looked like a large insect, another who seemed to be made of gas trapped in a containment suit, and a few others that Lisa could not quite identify. "Your faction will be known as the Remnant Alliance," the professor announced. "You will begin with the fewest resources and the most challenging starting positions. This will test your ability to overcome adversity through cooperation and innovation." The insect-like student made a clicking sound that might have been distress. The gas being's containment suit hissed. Jake looked at Lisa with worry in his eyes. After class, the major faction leaders approached Professor Veltharian to discuss strategy. Sarketh, the largest of the Drakari students, spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "Professor, is it fair to include such primitive species in a military simulation? The humans have barely learned to leave their planet. They know nothing of real warfare." Threndal, who spoke for the Silicari, added in a voice like crystal chimes, "Perhaps the simulation would be more educational if the newer species observed rather than participated." Professor Veltharian's silver form seemed to brighten. "Every species brings unique perspectives to the study of conflict. You may find that underestimating your opponents is the first step toward defeat." As the other students filed out of the classroom, Lisa remained behind. She stared up at the simulated stars surrounding them and felt very small and very far from home. Jake had already left, probably to call his family on Earth. Lisa's parents could not afford interstellar communication, so she would be alone with her thoughts. Professor Veltharian noticed her still sitting in the empty classroom. "Ms. Martinez, you seem troubled." Lisa looked up at the shifting cloud of light. "Professor, I'm not sure I belong here. I don't know anything about war or military strategy. I was just good at history and languages in school." The professor's form pulsed thoughtfully. "History and languages. Interesting combination. Tell me, what kind of history did you study?" "All kinds," Lisa said. "Ancient civilizations, wars, how different cultures solved problems. I liked learning about how people lived and why they made the choices they did." Professor Veltharian was quiet for a long moment. "Ms. Martinez, you may find that understanding people is more valuable in war than understanding weapons. The greatest military victories in galactic history were won not by the strongest or the most advanced, but by those who understood their enemies better than their enemies understood themselves." Lisa nodded and gathered her things. As she walked back to her dormitory, she thought about the professor's words. Maybe she did not know about space battles or advanced weapons, but she had spent her whole life watching people and trying to understand why they did what they did. She passed a group of Drakari students practicing combat moves in the hallway. They were big and strong and looked like they could crush her without thinking about it. But as she watched them, she noticed something interesting. They all fought the same way. They all made the same kinds of moves. They were predictable. Lisa smiled for the first time since arriving at the academy. Maybe being underestimated was not such a bad thing after all. The war simulation began 3 days later. Lisa stood in the command center with her faction members, staring at a three-dimensional map of their assigned star system floating in the air above them. It looked pathetic compared to what the other factions had received. The Remnant Alliance controlled 3 small planets in a corner of the galaxy. One planet was mostly desert with few resources. Another was covered in ice and had basic mining operations. The third was a gas giant with some floating research stations. Their fleet consisted of 12 outdated ships that looked like they belonged in a museum. Jake stood next to Lisa, shaking his head. "This is hopeless. Look at what the Drakari got." He pointed to another section of the map where Sarketh's hegemony faction controlled a cluster of rich worlds surrounded by massive battle fleets. Clicktar, the insect-like student, made nervous clicking sounds. "My people say this assignment is punishment for being weak species. We are meant to fail quickly, so others can have real competition." Wisp, the gas being in the containment suit, spoke in a voice like wind through caves. "The simulation makers expect us to surrender within first week. Why else give us such poor starting position?" Lisa walked around the floating map, studying every detail. The other factions had already begun their first moves. The Drakari hegemony was sending battle fleets toward the nearest neutral systems, planning to conquer them with overwhelming force. The Silicari Collective was building massive defensive structures around their worlds and upgrading their technology. The Aquarian Federation was forming perfect battle formations and moving slowly but steadily toward strategic positions. "Everyone expects us to lose fast," Lisa said quietly. "Maybe that's exactly what we should do." Jake looked at her like she was crazy. "What do you mean? We're supposed to try to win, right?" Lisa smiled. "I mean, we should give them what they expect to see. Let me ask you something. When you were a kid playing games, who did you watch more carefully? The player who was winning or the player who was losing?" "The one who was winning, I guess," Jake said. "Exactly. Nobody pays attention to the loser. They watch the winners to see what they're doing right." Lisa pointed to their pathetic fleet on the map. "Right now, every faction is studying each other's moves, trying to figure out their strategies. But nobody is watching us because they think we don't matter." Resonance, the crystalline student whose body rang like bells when she moved, chimed thoughtfully. Human Lisa suggests deception strategy. This could work if executed properly. Over the next few days, Lisa put her plan into action. The Remnant Alliance appeared to panic. They sent desperate messages to other factions asking for help. They moved their ships in confused patterns that made no sense. They seemed to argue among themselves about what to do next. The other students in the academy began to whisper about how the minor species were falling apart, just as everyone predicted. Even some professors shook their heads sadly when they watched the Remnant Alliance's pathetic attempts at military strategy. But Lisa was not panicking. Every night after the daily simulation sessions, she went to the Academy's vast library. The building was ancient and filled with the military history of hundreds of species. Most students never came here because they preferred the interactive computer databases. But Lisa had always loved books and old records. Jake found her there one evening, surrounded by stacks of historical documents. "What are you doing? We're getting crushed out there. The Drakari just took another system and they're laughing about how weak we are." Lisa looked up from a report about something called the Zephyr Rebellion that happened 300 years ago. "I'm learning. Do you know how many times in galactic history a small, weak force defeated a much larger enemy?" "Not many, I bet," Jake said. "More than you'd think. But it only works when the small force does something the big force doesn't expect. The problem is that most species fight the same way their ancestors did for thousands of years. They have traditions and honor codes and ways of thinking about war that never change." Lisa showed Jake an old battle report. "Look at this. The Drakari Empire fought the same way 800 years ago as they do today. Massive fleets, direct attacks, overwhelming force. They win most of the time, because most enemies try to fight them the same way and lose." Jake sat down next to her. "So what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that humans are different. We don't have thousands of years of military tradition. We learned to fight in a place where everything wanted to kill us. We had to be creative, or we died. Lisa pulled out another document about Earth's military history. Look at some of the battles humans fought on Earth. Small armies defeating big ones by doing things nobody expected. Over the following week, Lisa continued her research while the simulation continued. The major factions were locked in increasingly serious battles. The Drakari had conquered several neutral systems, but were running into strong Silicari defenses. The Aquarians were slowly surrounding the ethereal faction's territory. Everyone was so focused on these major conflicts that they barely noticed what the Remnant Alliance was doing, which was exactly what Lisa wanted. While the others fought over the rich systems in the center of the galaxy, Lisa quietly moved her forces to the edges. She made deals with neutral planets that the major factions ignored. She offered protection to small colonies in exchange for resources. She sent her ships on what looked like random patrol missions, but were actually carefully planned reconnaissance operations. Most importantly, Lisa started building relationships with NPCs in the simulation. These were computer-controlled characters, representing civilians, merchants, and minor officials. Most students treated them like background decoration, but Lisa talked to them, learned their concerns, and offered solutions to their problems. "This is boring," complained Torgon, another student in their faction who looked like a walking tree. "We should be fighting battles, not talking to computer merchants." "Those computer merchants control supply routes," Lisa explained. "The big factions take what they need by force. But that makes the merchants hate them. If we treat the merchants fairly, they might help us when we need it." Zeftal, Lisa's roommate, visited the command center to watch their progress. As a Centaurian, he was naturally good at mathematics and strategy. He studied their position on the galactic map with confusion. "I do not understand your strategy, Lisa. You appear to be avoiding all profitable territory and important strategic positions. Your fleet strength has barely increased while other factions grow stronger every day." Lisa nodded. "That's exactly how it looks. But look closer at what we actually control." She changed the map display to show trade routes and resource flows instead of just territories. "We don't control the richest planets, but we control a lot of the routes between them. We don't have the biggest fleet, but our ships are spread out in positions where they can see everything that happens." Zeftal's eyes widened. "You are building an intelligence network. You can see all enemy movements while remaining invisible yourself." "More than that," Lisa said. "I'm learning how each faction thinks. The Drakari always attack the strongest enemy position because they think it brings the most honor. The Silicari always choose the most technologically advanced solution to every problem. The Aquarians never break their formations even when it would be smarter to split up." Jake was starting to understand. "You're looking for weaknesses. Everyone has weaknesses. The trick is finding them before they find yours." Lisa pulled up a detailed analysis she had been working on. "I've been studying every battle these factions have fought, not just in this simulation but in their historical records. They all have patterns. They all have things they never considered doing because their cultures tell them those things are wrong or dishonorable or impossible." Clicktar clicked excitedly. "But humans have no such restrictions. Your species is too new to have rigid traditions." "Exactly. We can do things they would never think of because we don't have thousands of years of ancestors telling us that's not how war works." The second week of the simulation ended with a major battle between the Drakari and Silicari fleets. Both sides lost ships and resources while the Aquarians and Ethereals maneuvered for better positions. The Academy buzzed with excitement about the spectacular space battle. Nobody paid attention to the Remnant Alliance, which had just completed the first phase of Lisa's real plan. While everyone else fought over the center of the galaxy, she had quietly built a network of allies, information sources, and strategic positions around the edges. Her fleet was still small, but it was no longer the collection of outdated ships they had started with. More importantly, Lisa now knew exactly how each enemy faction thought, how they made decisions, and what they would never consider doing. She had found their weaknesses. Professor Veltharion watched the simulation results with growing interest. In his thousands of years of teaching, he had seen many different approaches to warfare. but he had never seen a faction spend so much time studying their enemies while appearing to accomplish nothing. The human student was planning something. He was sure of it. The question was whether her plan would work, or if she was just delaying the inevitable defeat that everyone expected. 3 weeks into the simulation, the galaxy was burning. The Drakari hegemony controlled 15 star systems and was building the largest fleet anyone had ever seen. The Silicari Collective had turned their core worlds into technological fortresses that seemed impossible to attack. The Aquarian Federation moved through space in perfect formations that looked like deadly art. Everyone expected the final battles to be between these three great powers. The ethereal faction still controlled their ancient territories through mysterious energy weapons. The smaller factions had either been conquered or had joined stronger allies, everyone except the Remnant Alliance. Lisa stood in her command center, watching reports flow in from across the galaxy. Her faction still looked weak to outside observers. They controlled the same poor planets they had started with, plus a few small colonies that nobody else wanted. Their fleet had grown but was still much smaller than the major powers. But Lisa knew something the others did not. While they had been fighting each other, she had been preparing for something much bigger. "It's time," she told her faction members. "We've learned everything we can from watching. Now we act." Jake looked nervous. "Are you sure about this? We're still outnumbered 10 to 1 by any of the major factions." Lisa smiled. "Numbers don't matter if you're fighting the right battle, and we're not going to fight their battle. We're going to fight ours." The first strike came without warning. A Drakari supply convoy traveling between two of their conquered worlds simply vanished. One moment it was there on the sensors, the next it was gone. No distress signals, no battle reports, no wreckage. 20 ships carrying weapons and supplies for the hegemony fleet just disappeared. Sarketh, the Drakari leader, roared his anger across the command center. "Who dares attack hegemony supply lines? Show yourselves and fight with honor." But nobody claimed responsibility. The major factions blamed each other, but they were all accounted for. Their fleets were engaged in known battles or defending their territories. 2 days later, it happened again. This time, a Silicari research station went dark. The Collective's most advanced facility, working on new shield technology, stopped, responding to communications. When they sent ships to investigate, they found the station empty. All the researchers were gone, all the equipment was missing, and there was no sign of how it had happened. Threndal's crystal body rang with alarm frequencies. "This is impossible. Our sensors showed no enemy ships in that system. How can a research station simply disappear?" The Aquarian Federation began to tighten their formations, worried about these mysterious attacks. The ethereal faction increased their energy barriers. Everyone was looking over their shoulders, wondering who was responsible. Lisa watched the chaos from her command center and felt satisfied. Phase 1 of her plan was working perfectly. "How are we doing this?" Wisp asked, his gas form swirling with excitement. "Our fleet is nowhere near those systems." Lisa called up a tactical display. "We're not using our fleet for these attacks. We're using assets the major factions don't know we have." The display showed the real extent of the Remnant Alliance's influence. While the major factions had been focused on conquering planets and building fleets, Lisa had been recruiting merchant captains who were tired of being pushed around by the big powers, asteroid miners who wanted protection from pirates, small colony leaders who were ignored by the major factions. "All those people we helped during the first 3 weeks," Lisa explained. "They're helping us now." The Drakari convoy was attacked by pirates who were actually merchant ships with hidden weapons. The Silicari research station was evacuated by rescue ships that were actually working for us. Resonance chimed with understanding. "You built secret network. Major factions think they control galaxy, but you control the people." Lisa nodded. "The big factions think about war as fleet battles and planet conquests. But war is really about people. Control the people, and you control everything else." The psychological warfare was just beginning. Lisa had studied each faction's culture and weaknesses. Now she started exploiting them. She sent fake communications to the Drakari suggesting that the Silicari had developed a new weapon that could make ships invisible. The Drakari, obsessed with honor and direct combat, began to panic about enemies, who could not be seen or fought properly. She fed intelligence to the Aquarians that the ethereal faction was planning to use forbidden weapons of mass destruction. The Aquarians, who prized order and following rules, became outraged and began preparing for war against the ethereals. She leaked information to the Silicari that other factions were sharing technology behind their backs. The collective, who believed their technology was superior to everyone else's, became suspicious and started hoarding their resources instead of using them effectively. Within a week, the major factions were turning against each other. The Drakari demanded that the Silicari prove they were not using invisible weapons. The Aquarians accused the ethereals of planning war crimes. The Silicari refused to share any more technology with their former allies. The professors at the academy watched in amazement as the simulation descended into chaos. Factions that had been cooperating began fighting each other. Ancient alliances crumbled as paranoia spread. "What is happening?" Professor Kethmiran asked during a faculty meeting. "The simulation parameters have not changed, but the factions are behaving irrationally." Professor Veltharian studied the data streams with growing fascination. "Someone is manipulating the information flow. False intelligence is being planted to create conflicts between the major powers. But who? None of the major factions have the capabilities for such sophisticated deception." Professor Veltharian's silver form pulsed thoughtfully. "Perhaps we should look at the factions we have been ignoring." Meanwhile, Lisa was preparing for the next phase of her plan. The major factions were weakening themselves through internal conflicts and paranoia, but she knew they would eventually figure out what was happening and unite against her. She needed to be ready for that moment. "Jake, I need you to coordinate with our hidden allies. When the major factions realize we're behind all this, they're going to combine their fleets and come for us. We need to be ready." Jake had grown more confident over the past weeks. "What about the honor thing? Won't they demand we fight them in open battle?" Lisa laughed. "That's exactly what they'll demand. And that's exactly what we're not going to give them. We're going to fight like humans." She called up a display showing Earth's military history. On Earth, humans learned to fight in an environment where we were always outmatched. We couldn't fly like birds or run like cheetah or fight like lions. We had to be smarter. We had to use tools and tactics and tricks that our enemies couldn't counter. Clicktar clicked excitedly. "You will use human war methods against alien enemies?" "I'm going to use every advantage we have. The major factions have been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They have rules and traditions and honor codes we don't. We can do things they would never consider because they think those things are wrong or impossible." Lisa pulled up detailed files on each faction leader. "Sarketh believes that retreat is shameful, so he'll never withdraw even when he should. Threndal thinks technology can solve any problem, so she'll always choose the most complex solution. The Aquarian commander never breaks formation, even when flexibility would be better." "And the ethereals?" Resonance asked. "The ethereals think they're above physical warfare. They believe their energy powers make them invincible. That's their biggest weakness." Lisa's plan was brilliant and terrifying. She was going to turn each faction's strengths against them. The Drakari love of honor would make them predictable. The Silicari faith in technology would make them overconfident. The Aquarian discipline would make them inflexible. The ethereal arrogance would make them careless. But first she needed to provoke them into making the first move. The opportunity came when Sarketh finally lost his patience. Tired of fighting invisible enemies and dealing with mysterious attacks, he demanded a meeting with all faction leaders. "Enough games," he roared across the communication channels. "I know someone is responsible for these coward attacks. Face us in honorable battle or be marked as weak forever." Lisa smiled as she prepared her response. This was exactly what she wanted. "We accept your challenge, Sarketh, but we choose the terms. If you want to fight us, you'll have to find us first." The message sent shockwaves through the academy. The pathetic remnant alliance was challenging the mighty Drakari hegemony. Students gathered to watch what everyone expected to be a very short battle. Professor Veltharian studied the tactical displays with growing excitement. After 30 years of teaching, he was finally seeing something new. The human student was about to attempt something that had never been tried in the Academy's history. She was going to fight a war that followed no rules except the ones she made, herself. The question was whether human ingenuity could overcome overwhelming odds, or whether some advantages were simply too large to overcome with cleverness alone. The answer would come soon enough. The Great Alliance formed faster than Lisa had expected. Within 24 hours of her challenge to Sarketh, every major faction had put aside their differences and joined together. The Drakari Hegemony, Silicari Collective, Aquarian Federation, and Ethereal Empire combined their fleets into the largest armada in the simulation's history. Lisa watched the enemy formations gathering on her tactical display. Over 300 warships from 4 different species, each one more advanced than anything in her fleet. The combined force had enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. Jake stared at the numbers with horror. Lisa, this is insane. They have 50 ships for every one of ours. We can't possibly win a direct fight. Lisa smiled calmly. You're right. We can't win a direct fight, so we're not going to have one. The Academy buzzed with excitement. Students and professors gathered around viewing screens to watch what everyone expected to be the shortest battle in simulation history. Betting pools opened on how long the Remnant Alliance would last. Most estimates were under 10 minutes. Sarketh commanded the combined fleet from his massive battleship. His voice boomed across communication channels to every faction. We have united to crush these cowards who hide in shadows. Today we end their shameful tricks and restore honor to this simulation. Threndal's crystal form glowed with satisfaction. Our combined technological superiority makes victory inevitable. The primitive alliance cannot stand against our advanced weapons and shields. The Aquarian commander moved his ships into perfect attack formations. Order will triumph over chaos. Discipline will defeat desperation. The ethereal leader's energy form pulsed with ancient arrogance. These young species will learn why we have ruled the galaxy for millennia. Lisa listened to their communications and felt sorry for them. They still did not understand what they were really fighting. All ships, begin Phase 1, Lisa ordered quietly. Across the galaxy, her hidden network activated. Merchant ships that had been carrying supplies to the combined fleet suddenly developed engine problems and had to make emergency stops. Asteroid mining stations that provided fuel went offline for maintenance. Communication relays that connected the fleet to their home bases started experiencing technical difficulties. The combined fleet found itself cut off from supplies and reinforcements. They were powerful, but they were alone in empty space with whatever resources they carried. Sarketh growled with frustration. More coward tricks. Face us in battle. Lisa opened a communication channel to the combined fleet. Her face appeared, on screens across hundreds of ships. She looked young and small compared to the alien commanders, but her voice was steady and confident. I offered you a battle, she said. But I never said it would be the kind of battle you wanted. You think war is about who has the biggest fleet, but war is about who achieves their objectives. My objective is to defeat you. Your objective is to destroy me. Let's see who succeeds. The combined fleet began searching for Lisa's forces. They expected to find them defending the Remnant Alliance's home systems. Instead, they found empty space. The planets were abandoned, the defenses were gone, and there was no sign of enemy ships. Where are they? Threndal demanded. Our sensors show no enemy fleet formations anywhere in their territory. Lisa's voice came over the communication channels again. You're looking in the wrong place. You think like conquerors, so you assume we're defending territory. But we're not conquerors, we're survivors. And survivors don't fight battles they can't win. As the combined fleet searched empty systems, Lisa's real plan unfolded. While the major factions had gathered all their ships in one place, they had left their home systems defended by only skeleton crews. Lisa's hidden allies struck simultaneously across the galaxy. The attacks were not aimed at military targets. Instead, they hit infrastructure, supply lines, and civilian installations. Factories that built weapons suddenly had power failures. Shipyards that repaired damaged vessels found their computer systems corrupted. Agricultural worlds that fed. The major populations experienced mysterious equipment breakdowns. Within hours, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The home systems of every major faction were experiencing coordinated sabotage. Nothing was permanently destroyed, but everything was disrupted. "This is impossible," the Aquarian commander said. "How can they attack our home systems when our sensors show no enemy ships?" Lisa's image appeared on their screens again. "Because you're still thinking about war the old way. You think war is fought between fleets of warships in empty space. But real war is fought between entire populations across entire civilizations. You brought your fleets to fight me, but you forgot to protect your people." Sarketh's rage made his ship's hull glow red hot. "These are not honorable tactics. War should be fought between warriors, not against innocent civilians." "I'm not hurting your civilians," Lisa replied calmly. "I'm just making it impossible for them to support your war effort. Your factories can't build weapons without power. Your farms can't grow food without working equipment. Your people can't live normally while their infrastructure fails." The genius of Lisa's strategy became clear. She had not attacked the enemy fleets because she could not win that fight. Instead, she had attacked everything that made the fleets possible. Without supplies, fuel, replacement parts, and reinforcements, even the most powerful fleet would eventually become helpless. Professor Veltharion watched the simulation with amazement. In thousands of years of teaching military strategy, he had never seen anything like this. The human student was not fighting a battle. She was fighting an entire war using principles that none of the major species had ever considered. "Jake, initiate Phase 2, Lisa ordered. Phase 2 was psychological. Lisa began broadcasting messages to the populations of the major faction worlds. She did not threaten them or demand surrender. Instead, she asked simple questions. "Citizens of the Drakari Empire, why are your leaders spending resources on a war simulation while your infrastructure fails? Citizens of the Silicari Collective, why are your most advanced minds fighting games instead of solving the problems affecting your daily lives?" The messages were perfectly crafted for each species. She appealed to Drakari pride by suggesting their leaders were wasting time on unworthy opponents. She challenged Silicari logic by pointing out the inefficiency of their resource allocation. She questioned Aquarian order by highlighting the chaos their leaders had created. The major faction leaders found themselves facing something they had never encountered: domestic unrest. Their own populations began questioning why their governments were prioritizing the simulation over their daily needs. "This is intolerable," Threndal said, her crystal form flickering with stress. "She is turning our own people against us." "It's not possible," the ethereal leader insisted. "How can a primitive species understand our cultures well enough to manipulate them?" Lisa answered their question in her next broadcast. "I understand you because I studied you. While you were building fleets and making battle plans, I was learning everything about your species, your histories, and your ways of thinking. I know what you value, what you fear, and what you will never consider doing." She called up detailed profiles of each faction leader that she had compiled over the past weeks. The information was terrifyingly accurate. She knew Sarketh's family, history, Threndal's academic achievements, the Aquarian commander's military record, and the ethereal leader's ancient accomplishments. "You know nothing about humans because you never thought we were worth studying," Lisa continued. "You assumed we were too primitive to be a threat. That assumption is why you're losing." The combined fleet was trapped in an impossible situation. They could not return to defend their home systems because that would mean admitting defeat in the simulation. But they could not continue the hunt for Lisa's forces because their own populations were demanding they come home and fix the problems she had created. Sarketh made the decision that Lisa knew he would make. His warrior culture would not allow retreat, so he chose to escalate instead. "All ships, prepare for maximum aggression protocol. We will burn every system in this galaxy until we find the cowards who hide from honorable battle." Lisa had been waiting for this moment. Sarketh's rage was about to make him predictable in exactly the way she needed. "Jake, begin Phase 3. It's time to end this." Jake looked at the tactical display showing the massive enemy fleet preparing to destroy everything in their path. Are you sure about this? If we mess up, they really will burn down the galaxy. Lisa nodded. Phase 3 only works if they're angry enough to stop thinking clearly. Thanks to Sarketh, they're exactly where I want them. She opened communication channels to every ship in the combined fleet. Her voice was no longer calm and confident. Instead, she sounded frightened and desperate. Please, we surrender. We can't fight your combined fleets. We're just students trying to pass a class. This has gone too far. The major faction leaders looked at each other with satisfaction. Finally, the annoying humans were showing proper fear and respect. They had no idea that they were about to fall into the largest trap in military simulation history. The combined fleet moved toward the coordinates Lisa had transmitted, expecting to find her forces waiting to surrender. Sarketh felt satisfaction burning in his chest. Finally, the cowardly humans would face honorable defeat. All ships maintain battle formation, he ordered. We will accept their surrender, but we must be ready if this is another trick. Threndal's sensors scanned the target system carefully. I detect a small fleet of human ships near the third planet. They appear to be powered down and defenseless. The Aquarian commander studied the tactical display. The formation is poor. They show no discipline or organization. This appears to be a genuine surrender. The ethereal leader pulsed with ancient authority. As it should be. Perhaps this defeat will teach the younger species proper respect for their betters. Lisa watched the massive enemy fleet approach on her command screens. 312 ships carrying the combined might of 4 galactic civilizations. It was the most powerful force ever assembled in the Academy's simulation history. It was also exactly where she wanted them. Jake, are all our people in position? She asked, quietly. Jake checked his displays. Everyone's ready. The decoy fleet is broadcasting surrender signals. All our real assets are hidden and waiting for your signal. Lisa nodded. Clicktar, how are our allies? The insect student clicked excitedly. All hidden ships report ready. Merchant vessels, mining ships, civilian transports, all equipped with surprise weapons and positioned around enemy fleet path. Resonance, what about the trap itself? The crystal student chimed softly. System prepared. Gravity wells charging. Enemy fleet entering optimal position in 60 seconds. Lisa took a deep breath. Everything depended on the next few minutes. If her plan worked, she would achieve the impossible. If it failed, her forces would be completely destroyed. The combined fleet reached the coordinates and found exactly what they expected. A small collection of human ships floating helplessly near a barren planet. The vessels showed no shields, no weapons charging, no signs of resistance. This is Admiral Sarketh of the combined fleet, the Drakari leader announced. You have caused enough trouble with your coward tactics. Surrender now and face honorable defeat. Lisa's image appeared on communication screens across the enemy fleet. She looked tired and scared. Nothing like the confident strategist who had been tormenting them for weeks. We surrender, she said in a shaking voice. Please don't destroy our ships, we're just students. We never meant for this to get so serious. Sarketh felt vindicated. This was how war should end, with the weak acknowledging the strength of the mighty. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. Your defeat will be recorded with honor. The human ships complied, dropping their shields and powering down their weapons. The combined fleet moved closer, surrounding the defeated vessels in a perfect formation. That was when Lisa smiled. Thank you for gathering your entire fleet in one convenient location, she said, her voice suddenly calm and confident again. You've just made the final phase much easier. Alarm bells rang across every ship in the combined fleet as sensors detected massive energy readings throughout the system. The barren planet they had ignored suddenly came alive with hidden installations. The asteroids around them revealed themselves to be camouflaged weapons platforms. The space dust that had seemed normal was actually a cloud of microscopic devices. But the real surprise was the fleet itself. Every ship that had been helping Lisa's network for the past month was here, hidden among the civilian traffic and background noise that the major factions never bothered to scan carefully. Hundreds of merchant vessels, mining ships, transport, craft and small civilian vessels suddenly dropped their disguises and revealed military-grade weapons. Impossible, Threndal gasped as her sensors registered over 800 ships surrounding the combined fleet. Where did they come from? Lisa's trap was beautiful in its simplicity. While the major factions had been focused on building the biggest possible fleets, she had been building the largest possible network. Every small ship, every civilian vessel, every merchant trader that the major powers ignored had been quietly modified and positioned for this moment. You never paid attention to the little people, Lisa explained as her hidden fleet powered up weapons. You only saw military vessels as threats, but in real war everyone fights, not just soldiers. The combined fleet found itself surrounded and outnumbered 3-1, but even worse, they were trapped. The planet they had approached was actually a massive gravity manipulation device that Lisa's allies had been building for weeks. With the flip of a switch, it created artificial gravity fields that prevented any ship from jumping to faster than light speed. You cannot escape, and you cannot call for help, Lisa announced. Your supply lines are cut, your home systems are in chaos, and your fleet is trapped in a gravity well. You have one choice: surrender or be destroyed. Sarketh roared with rage. This is not honorable warfare. You use tricks and deception like a coward. I use whatever works, Lisa replied simply. You call it cowardly because your culture tells you that certain tactics are dishonorable. But humans don't have that luxury. On Earth, we learn to fight things bigger and stronger than us by being smarter and more adaptable. The ethereal leader's energy form flickered with fury. You are too primitive to understand true warfare. We have fought battles across the galaxy for millennia. And you've been fighting the same battles the same way for millennia, Lisa said. You never learned to adapt because you never had to. You always had bigger fleets, better technology, more resources. So you never learned what humans had to learn: how to win when everything is against you. The Academy's viewing halls fell silent as students and professors watched the impossible scene. The weakest faction in the simulation had not only survived, but had trapped and surrounded every major power simultaneously. Professor Veltharian studied the tactical displays with awe. Remarkable. She did not defeat them with superior force or technology. She defeated them with superior understanding. The combined fleet faced an impossible choice. They could fight and probably take many of Lisa's ships with them, but they would ultimately lose. The gravity trap made escape impossible, and they were outnumbered by hidden enemies in carefully prepared positions. Or they could surrender to a human student who had outthought them at every turn. Threndal was the first to speak. We yield. The Silicari Collective acknowledges defeat. The Aquarian commander followed quickly. The Federation surrenders. Your victory is undeniable. The ethereal leader took longer, his ancient pride warring with reality. Finally, his energy form dimmed in submission. The Empire yields to superior strategy. All eyes turned to Sarketh. The Drakari leader stared at Lisa's image for a long moment, his warrior culture struggling with the concept of defeat. You fight without honor, he said finally. I fight to win, Lisa replied. Honor is a luxury for species that don't have to worry about survival. Sarketh slowly nodded his massive head. The hegemony surrenders. The simulation ended with a flash of light. The artificial star systems, the gravity wells, the hidden fleets, all disappeared. Lisa found herself back in Professor Veltharian's classroom, surrounded by stunned silence. Jake was grinning like an idiot. We did it, we actually did it. But Lisa was not celebrating. She looked around the classroom at the faces of her fellow students and saw something that made her stomach sink. Fear. Not respect, not admiration, but genuine fear. Sarketh spoke for many when he asked, how can your species live with themselves? Using such methods, turning allies against each other, attacking civilian targets? Lisa felt suddenly tired. We do what we have to do to survive. On Earth, everything wanted to kill us. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, even other humans. We learned to use every advantage because we didn't have a choice. Professor Veltharian materialized in the center of the classroom. Ms. Martinez, your performance will be studied in military academies across the galaxy. You have demonstrated tactical innovations that challenge fundamental assumptions about warfare. But his next words chilled the room. However, your methods have also raised serious concerns among the galactic community about humanity's approach to conflict resolution. Lisa realized what had happened. She had won the simulation, but she had lost something more important. She had proven that humans could be dangerous, but she had also proven why other species might be afraid of them. That night, Lisa sat alone in her dormitory room, staring out at the alien stars. Zeph Tal had moved out that afternoon, claiming he needed to study with his own species. Jake had received messages from several alien students telling him they would prefer to avoid humans in future classes. A quantum communication arrived from Earth. It was from her professor at the academy, back home. Lisa, we've been monitoring your simulation results. The galactic community is concerned. Several species are questioning whether humans should continue in the exchange program. There are talks about limiting human access to certain technologies and star systems. Lisa closed the message without finishing it. She had wanted to prove that humans belonged in galactic society. Instead, she had proven that humans were too dangerous to be trusted.